change the orientation settings on the video, and we should be good to go. Welcome. Thank you for joining me on Sewing in Slippers with Sue. Today we are going to be sewing once again. I'm working on my Almost in Baltimore quilt, so we're going to be covering some of the designing the swag border for my Almost in Baltimore quilt. How do we handle those corners? Once we get to the corners, our swags don't fit exactly the way that they should, and so I'm having to make some changes to the swag size. And with rotary cutting your swags, that might be a little bit of a challenge, and I haven't tackled that yet, so we're going to do it together. All right, what else is happening today? I am unloading from my event yesterday at the New England Quilt Museum. Now, if you are not familiar with the New England Quilt Museum, you want to be. The New England Quilt Museum is a wonderful museum that highlights beautiful work done by women of all points in history. So they have old quilts, they have more contemporary quilts, they have special exhibits all the time, and it is wonderful to see the collections and the special exhibits that they bring into the museum. Now, if you are not in New England, you might want to check out your local quilt museum. There are quilt museums. Sorry, just unloading my templates and I dropped the littlest one. There are quilt museums all over this country, and if you have the opportunity to go to a quilt museum on a regular basis, you're going to see an ever-changing exhibits that highlight different aspects of the quilting world. So yesterday I was at the museum and I didn't have a chance to go live. I normally go live once I'm at the museum. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be meeting with the curator at the museum and going through some of the collection with her. She needs some help going through some of the collection. And so when I go the next time, I will do a live episode from the museum. In the meantime, I just want to promote the museum. It is such a wonderful gathering place. Yesterday, we had Meet the Teachers for all of the New England guilds. Guild members of the museum were invited to this special event to meet all of the local New England teachers. And we all did a 3-minute presentation to the guilds to tell them what we bring to the quilting world that's different from other quilters and why we teach what we do. So that was great fun. I had a wonderful time at the museum, meeting with the director, meeting with the curator, and meeting with all the other teachers that were present, not pregnant, all the other teachers that were present, as well as the guild representatives from all of the program committees that are out there in New England. So it was great fun. We had a wonderful time. And if you haven't been to the museum, there's a wonderful exhibit there right now that is not exactly quilting. It really is a wonderful art exhibit, and you'll want to check it out. So go to the New England Quilt Museum's website, see what they have to offer, and try to get yourself up there to Lowell to visit the exhibits. Now, they do change periodically, so the more often you go, the more exhibits you get to see. So I recommend maybe quarterly trying to get up to the museum. Go ahead and get on their mailing list, and then you'll get a list of all of the exhibits. You can kind of check off the ones that you want to go to. Put them on your calendar. Set aside one day, 1 day a month or 1 day a quarter where you can get up to the museum and see what they have to offer, because it is absolutely a spectacular art museum and you're going to really love it. It's very quick. It's not hours and hours. It's not taxing on your body because it's really all the exhibits are on one level. And so it's really a wonderful afternoon, maybe a couple of hours to spend there at the museum. Okay, so today, I got back from the museum last night, my daughter's birthday, had a busy evening, had a guild meeting for my own quilt guild, and I didn't have time to unpack and get ready for today's episode. However, we are going to move forward on our Almost in Baltimore quilt. But before I do, let me tell you what's happening outside. We have our first snow of the season right now. And while we're still in our fall season, these are some leaves from my Japanese maple tree, that beautiful, it's normally a burgundy Japanese maple, but it's turning these beautiful shades of pink through that burgundy. And I just thought the colors were outstanding and wanted to share that with you today. But we are getting our first taste of winter with a little bit of snowfall. And so I'm going to be hunkering down. I'm going to be doing a whole lot more sewing. You had your first snow yesterday. Oh, that's excellent, Kathy. I love it too because it makes me really want to hunker down and just snuggle into my sewing room and get more sewing done. Also, speaking of the guilds, both of my quilt guilds have shows this year. So I have a show in March and a show in April for my 2 quilting guilds. And so I really need to get this quilt done that's behind me. So you're going to help me work on that today. And we're going to be tackling those borders. So you may remember that I shared the borders with you in my newsletter. So if you don't already get my newsletter, go ahead and sign up at SuePellinDesigns.com. You can sign up for the newsletter. When you do, I'm going to send you a free pattern, and then we can start to communicate on a regular basis. So once a week, I send out a newsletter. And in my newsletter 2 weeks ago, I showed you a picture of the Almost in Baltimore quilt and what I had planned for the borders. So I've been working on my swag borders, and now I've come to the point where I've got those borders on, but I need to make those swags meet in the corner. So we're going to sew one more border on today, and then we're going to get ready to make those swags meet in the corner. So when I was making my borders, I kind of estimated how many swags I would need for that border. And I was really uncertain how those corners were going to come together. So, excuse me. So I did this in EQ. And by making the quilt in electric quilt, I knew all the sizes were going to be correct. So I was able to design a corner block for these borders to come together. But when I was making the actual borders, I wasn't really paying attention to how many swags I needed along that border. And I actually made a mistake. So for those of you in my Ahead of the Curve membership, you love to see when I make mistakes because then we can correct those mistakes together and figure out how to do the workaround, right? How to take something that's not perfect and make it so that nobody would ever know that it wasn't perfect. So I filmed what I did when I made a mistake on my borders, and I actually put 2 extra swags on one of the borders, and I fused them and I stitched them, and now I had to show you how I corrected that problem. So I filmed it while I was removing those 2 extra swags from the borders. And I'll do a little bit of editing on those, and then it's going to go up into our technique videos. Now, why would making a mistake go into our technique videos? Well, there's definitely a technique for fixing mistakes, and I want to share that with all of my students. Now, if you're not already a student of mine, we are going to be having Appliqued School next week. So if you're not already a Sue Pellin Design student and learning my techniques, you might just want a quick overview of those techniques. And that's what I do during Appliqued School. In fact, I compare my favorite applique techniques to hand applique. And I show you both of those techniques, and we discuss which one is going to work better for your situation, and you get to decide which type of applique you would like to pursue. And then once you do figure out which type of applique is going to be best for you, then I give you the opportunity to come and work with me in our Ahead of the Curve community. So that is happening on November 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's a 3-day applique school. It's completely free. And you can come just hear all about why I do my applique in a very unusual and different way. And you'll get to compare 3 different methods of applique and see which one is going to work best for you. Now, I hope you can hear me while I am sewing on these borders. I wanted to get the last border sewn on so that we could tackle those corners. And as I do that, we can walk through how I designed the swag borders and what we need to do to make these swag borders come together in the corners. When you're making a border like this swag border, and I can only make the swag in one size. Not officially true. I mean, I could vary the sizes of the swags, but the swag that I've shown you in our last episode or 2 was made using the 7-inch hearts, rings and things tool. So it is 7 inches long. And because it's 7 inches long, I couldn't adjust those swags to fit the exact size of the quilt. So I'm having to be creative in those corners. So that's the job that we're going to tackle today. How can we make those corners work so it looks like it was planned, so it doesn't look like it was a mistake, so it looks like I had every intention of adjusting the swag sizes in the corners to make those corners go together. So I'm just about done with the stitching. And you'll notice that in my haste, in my hurry to get this sewn with you, I didn't even cut off the old border. So I put one border on all the way across the quilt, and those borders are extra long. So I haven't trimmed this one down yet. So we'll see how I do sewing the next border on. I should have pressed those first 2 borders flat. Then I should have trimmed that border straight across on the corner so that I could put these long borders on the top and bottom of the quilt going straight across. And I'm going to have to deal with that now instead of doing it the right way and doing it before I put this second border on. Now, this would be the technique if I were mitering my borders. I would leave these long pieces here so that I could miter the borders. But the borders weren't quite long enough to miter. In fact, I have used every inch of this fabric that I own. I bought this fabric years ago. I didn't quite get enough for the quilt. So I'm using every last scrap of fabric that I own. So I did not have enough to make the borders long enough to miter them. So I'm putting the borders straight across. So I put my 2 side borders on first, and then I should have trimmed those to fit, and then put my top and bottom borders straight across with a straight seam. So now I'm having to mark that border and make sure that this next border goes absolutely straight across. So I'm just going to use my ruler to make sure that these are going at a 90-degree angle to each other. And they are. So I'm not going to mark it. I'm not going to cut it. I'm simply going to put a pin in where these 2 are crossing here, and then just continue sewing a nice straight line. So the problem is, if you don't cut in a nice straight line, you can end up with wonky borders that don't lay flat. Everything has to be at perfect 90-degree angles to each other. So just by measuring as I go, I was able to create that beautiful 90-degree angle. So there you have it. We've got the borders now sewn all the way across. Now I can do my trimming. And now we have to make those borders come together. Those swags come together in the corner. So I left my last swag loose because after putting this seam in right here, I didn't know where that swag was going to end. So it's actually fine. I could have fused this one down and stitched, but this next swag would definitely have gone over that seam line. So I left off that next swag in the line, and on this one here, I left off this swag because these two are going to come out into the corner. So let's lay that down on my ironing board. Let me press that out, and then we can design that corner section. So I'm going to have to move you around here in order to, let's put this ironing board down. Okay, I'm afraid what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to see me, but you're going to be able to see the ironing board. And that's okay. I just want to get this corner pressed out properly. And I want you to be able to see that border. And it's way more important than you seeing me. But once I get settled here, I'll be able to sit down and you'll be able to see me too. I'm going to pull off this this tote right here. The reason why that tote is there is because I got this beautiful new gradations fabric, and I've been making kits for gradations, but I don't yet have the thread for that gradations project. And I've been searching for the exact perfect thread for those colors, and I'm struggling with finding the right thread for that gradation fabric by Jennifer Sampu. But I'm excited to have a new gradations kit out there that people can use to make that beautiful gradations quilt. You may know that I haven't been able to get the fabric from Sew Batik that I had for one of my kits. So I'm going to be creating this new kit with the Jennifer Sampu fabric, and I'm quite excited about it. So I wrote to Bob Purcell, and Bob is the owner of YLI Fabrics. And you might remember that YLI Fabrics makes the beautiful King Tut thread line. I'm sorry, YLI Thread makes that beautiful King Tut thread. Well, that King Tut thread has had to change. They've had to rebrand it as Majestic Thread. And they're just starting to go back online since Bob bought out the company, and they're using the same exact manufacturer to make the thread, but it's no longer going to be called King Tut. It's going to be called Majestic Thread. So I had called Bob and said I'd really like to get hold of some of that thread, the King Tut thread, and he informed me that they're no longer making the King Tut and all of the wide range of colors that they had. So I'm really excited to get the new color card from Majestic, and at that time I will go ahead and make up the kits. Now the black kits, we're going to use black thread in order to sew on our gradations, but it's the kits on the white background where I'm looking for that Majestic thread that has all the colors of this beautiful blue and purple and pink gradation. And I want to put that color in the kit for this gradation. And I'm simply waiting on that. And that's why I've got this big stockpile here of kits that I'm not able to put on my website. So thank you for your patience with that. I did mention last week that I was going to get those kits on the website, and I haven't been able to do it yet. So thanks for your patience with that. Now, here on our corners, let me show you what our strategy is for the corners. So I'm going to have these two swags in the corners, and they're maybe about 4 inches apart from each other. And there's going to be a circle on the end of this one and there's going to be circle over here on the end of this one. And I promise I'll pick up that camera so you can see it a little more clearly. Now, the swags that we've been making are 7 inches. So this is the size of the swag. These are the ones that I cut for you as I was just playing, and they are not fused. So it's just to have a placeholder here so that you can see how these two swags are separated from each other. They need to come together, and right now they don't. I also don't have my little bag full of red circles. So I've got a purple circle here. Just for the heck of it, I'm going to put it out there. So what I designed on EQ is this type of a swag that's going to come out here and connect these two berries to that corner. So it's going to cover over the two swags here, right? Here and here. It's going to cover over the ends, and it's going to bring this swag right out to that corner and make a beautiful corner. Now, I'm not sure this is 100% the shape that I need to get. So let's go ahead and play with that shape. And I'm going to put the camera, I'm going to see if I can get the camera to behave and angle. I want that camera to angle down, and I'm not able to do that with this little tripod that I'm using. So let's go ahead and let's just try to straighten it out here. Now I'm going to be standing up, so you're not going to be seeing me for a few minutes. And let me just see if I can make a few little adjustments so that you can see that a little bit better. So what I want to do is I want to figure out how I'm going to make that curve right there. And I have no idea yet how I'm going to make that curve, but I know I've got some really wonderful curve tools. So let's see what happens when I use some of those curve tools. Here is the clamshell, the 9-inch that I used to do the inside of my swag. So the outside of the swag was done with the 7-inch. And the inside of the swag was done with that 9-inch curve. So is that going to be a curve I can use for this swag right here? Well, let's take a look. No, it's a little bit too curvy. It does not fit the swag that I am trying to create. So let's try my 8-inch curve. And look at that. That's not bad. It's a little shallower than the swag that I drew on EQ, but the swag I drew on EQ was just an idea. It was just, how do we create a swag that will come into the corner? So if my swag isn't quite as curvy, I think that that's going to be okay. So how am I going to cut a swag that looks like this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find, this is basically what the corner is going to look like. So it's going to have that swag coming out to the corner. It's going to have the two other swags that end under it. And so how am I going to cut this one? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that paper right in half, and I'm going to try to cut my swag on a fold. And so I just need to be able to cut half of that swag in order to be able to make the shape that I'm going for, okay? So the first thing to do is just to fold that. And now I'm going to work with the paper first. I'm not going to work on fabric because I really want to get the shape right with the tools that I have. So let's go ahead and try to reshape this swag using the tools that I already have, the Leaves Galore templates, and let's see how we can do with that swag shape. So I don't have a curve that is that curvy right here because my 8-inch curve, my 8-inch curve is shallower. My 9-inch curve is way too rounded. It brings this curve in too far, and I need it to be further apart. So I am going to have to work with the 8-inch curve. So seeing that I'm working with the 8-inch curve on the outside edge, maybe I can work with like a 6-inch curve or some other curve on this inside edge. So I can swoop this right inside like this and make a really, really thin swag. I don't think I'm going to like it quite that thin. So instead, let's see if I can use that 8-inch curve again to swoop in that swag. So I'm going to use that 8-inch curve again, and I'm going to go grab my paper scissors over here, and we're going to just test that out before we cut it out of fabric. I'm going to cut it right out of the paper. So what we're doing is we're designing our own border design. Now, normally, when you get a pattern from me, this has all been done for you, but I'm showing you the process. This is the process I go through when I'm designing quilts for all of you. So let's see what that swag looks like now. Okay, well, that's not a bad shape. I kind of like that. It's nice and delicate, and it kind of matches the swags that are already there. However, I think I brought it in a little too far, and it's not hitting the ends of these swags exactly. But is that okay? Let's see what happens if it doesn't hit the ends of those swags exactly, but I can connect the ends of the swags with those berries. All right. Well, there's something else I feel like I'm going to have to do to get this to lay just right. I feel like I need to make my diagonal line out from the corner of the borders right out to the exact end of the border. So in order to do that, I need to square up my borders. Right now I've got all these extra border pieces. This one's extra long. I need to square up this border. I need to square up the corner of the quilt, and then I need to mark a diagonal line on that corner. So let's go ahead and do that first. And then after we square up that corner, then I'll be able to get a better idea of where that swag needs to land. So again, the camera angles are awkward. I'm working with my son on getting a new camera set up. Right now I'm trying to do the Facebook Live on my phone, and in the future I want to be able to do this with my overhead camera. So we're working on that. We're going to get that solved. But in the meantime, you can probably see pretty well what I'm doing here with the camera angle that I have. If not, I'm going to hold that up for you after I trim up this corner so you can see exactly what I'm going for. So I'm just squaring up that corner nice and square with my ruler, making sure the lines on my ruler are right here on the seam line, as well as on the border edge up here to make sure everything is nice and square and straight. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim off that excess border that was underneath. And I, again, could have done this earlier, could have done this when I was piecing that corner, but that's all right. Now, I didn't want to cut anything because I was so nervous about only having the tiniest amount of fabric here left over. Okay, so now we've got that corner all set. And this one, this swag is going to come right straight across in line with the one right here under it. So how do I make sure that's going straight across? I'm going to measure what's under the swag. I'm going to draw a straight line on my the edge of my quilt here, and I'm going to make sure that this swag lays right on that line, as well as all of the swags in this line. They're all 1.5 inches from the edge of the quilt, so I have to make sure that this one is 1.5 inches from the edge of the quilt. I'm going to be putting my little berries on here. These are just placeholders right now. I haven't chosen the color of those berries. But now what I want to do is I want to take my ruler and draw that diagonal line as if I were mitering this corner. I want that diagonal line to go straight out from the corner of the quilt here. So corner of the quilt to the corner of my border. Let's draw a nice straight diagonal line. Now I want to take that swag that I created, and the problem is that because my two borders are different the two different sides of the quilt are different sizes. Remember, I couldn't adjust the size of the swags. They're 7 inches long. So if I'm putting that on the length of the quilt and on a different width of the quilt, they're going to end up in different places. They're not symmetrical here at the corner. So from one side of my diagonal, that end of the swag is about 3 inches away. From the other side, that end of the swag is only about 1.5 inches away. So I'm really struggling with how to make this quilt symmetrical, how to use one little corner swag here to bring in that discrepancy together. Because if I cut the swag this way, and this is my centering line, then the swag is equally distant from each point here from the diagonal. So if I put that on my quilt, but I've got 1.5 inches here, but I've got 3 inches over here, I'm actually going to need to change this swag to be uneven. Does that make sense? So let me show you on the quilt itself. Let me hold this up for you. Okay. So in order for this to, fold to lay right on the diagonal, these points come together because they're about 1.5 inches apart, but this point does not come up here in order to meet this dot. Likewise, over here, we've got, I can put a dot over on this side right here, and I can put a dot over here, and those are going to look symmetrical even though they're not perfect. But it's this area right here that has the discrepancy. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm probably going to cut this into 2 separate pieces. That way I can angle this swag the way that it needs to go in order to match up with this dot. And I'm going to be able to keep this one exactly as it is. So if I make this swag in 2 separate pieces and join them here right on the diagonal, I don't mind joining them right there on the diagonal. I will blanket stitch right along that diagonal in a nice straight line. Or the other thing is I could put a seam in there instead and not have to blanket stitch. So let me just put this down for a minute and let's talk that through. So let's initially, looking for my paper scissors again, there they are. Let's initially cut this swag right down the middle. So now these 2 pieces can work independently. So I can place this one here under the dot. I'm going to actually bring that down a little bit further and just tuck that end just barely under the dot and end over here at the diagonal. Now you can see it's missing the diagonal. I've got about 1/4 inch in between. So I actually need to make this swag longer in order for it to cross the diagonal. And then I've got this one that I can meet up with right here. So I'm having to shorten this end to fit under that dot. And here I'm going to need to lengthen this end right here. Well, that shouldn't be too bad, but I feel like this whole thing is a little bit short, that I'd actually like to go a little bit longer to fill in more of that corner space. Do you see how I could go just a little bit longer? Or I could go with a second version of this, a second swag right underneath that would actually match this point right here to this point right here. So I could do a second swoopy, pointy swag that would go right down there. So this is the dilemma that I'm having to face right now when I'm designing this quilt. Every quilt brings new decisions and new challenges, and I am not going to be a slave to cutting this with my Leaves Galore tools. If the tool is limiting you to doing what you want to do, then you can do away with using the tool. Tools are supposed to be useful items that make your quilting life easier. If this is making my quilting life harder by not giving me the exact shape that I want to create, there are only 4 corners on this quilt. Why not fussy cut those 4 corners to be the exact right size and shape that you need, rather than forcing a square peg into a round hole? So I never want to force you or encourage you even to use a tool that doesn't do the job that you need it to do. So if I simply want to make this swag wider and longer and cover more of that distance to the corner to fill in more of that corner, then that's what I'm going to do. I will fussy cut. In other words, I'm going to trace and I'm going to cut with scissors if that swag is not the right size and shape for my quilt. So that's my words of encouragement. Use the tools wherever you can to make your life easier. But if you're finding that you could more easily trace a shape that you drew out of paper, you'd rather trace that on and cut that with scissors, absolutely go for it, because that's going to be the easiest method to get the job done. Now, you know me, I love to cut everything with my rotary cutter. So even if I want to elongate these shapes, I'm probably still going to do that with my rotary cutter. I may even use my tools for that job, but and I'm probably going to do it 4 layers at a time once I figure out exactly what I'm doing. But I'm not ready to cut this fabric yet, even though I got the fabric all fused and ready to go, and it's sitting right here waiting for me to find that swag shape that's going to work best. I want to spend a little bit more time on this and make sure I get that swag shape exactly right. So you can bear with me. We might as well do this together. I want to play with that corner a little bit more, and I'm going to be tracing, I'm going to be cutting this out again out of paper to make sure that I'm filling up that corner exactly the way I want it in the finished quilt. Only then, only when I have the paper version that's perfect, then I'm going to convert that into the swag that I want to cut, or the swag that I'm going to cut. Now I still have these swag bits and pieces. These are not fused. I was just demonstrating last week how to cut swags. So these are the perfect little training wheels here, where I can play with these swags and see if I can come up with a corner design with what I already have cut for connecting those 2 bottom dots. So let me move you back. I'm going to stand up again. You're not going to be able to see my face. That's okay. I want you to see the corner of the quilt instead. All right, let me move this corner of the quilt right here, and let's see what happens with this swag shape. Can I make something that goes into that corner, even if I need to recut this shape and miter them somehow? Can I make a shape that I like going into that corner? So let's go ahead and cross these over and see. I'm having the same challenge here that I had over here. This is so much closer to my centering line. This dot right here is so close to the centering line, and this one is so far away. So no matter what I do with that swag shape that I already have, I don't think I'm going to be really very happy with this one mitering down that centering line. But let's give it a shot. Let's just tuck it under and see if we can make it look good from here and then from here, right? This is going to be a strange looking shape, but we might be able to do it. So if I were to use this swag shape, I would need to trim it up because they're different sizes, they're not mitering right down here in the middle. So what I would need to do, if I can find my, let's see, that was made with the 7-inch Rings and Things tool. So let's see if I can mark that with a chalk so it ends at the same place as this other one. Okay, well, that's not too bad. I kind of like the look of those two swags coming together. So let's give it a shot with our, this is just our scrap fabric. So I'm going to cut it with my scissors. Now, normally I would cut this with the rotary cutter and the tool to keep it nice and curvy. But right now I'm just playing. I just want to see if I'm going to be happy with that result. Now I'm going to cut this right down on that centering line, get rid of the excess, and now I'm going to see how this one matches up with that one, cutting it right down on that centering line. And you know, it's really not bad. I'm just going to fold that under. I'm going to cut off the excess and see if I can get these two to miter together pretty well. It's really not bad. I don't mind that so much. All right, I need to do a little bit better job mitering those together, but even though this is a wonky little shape, and I'm going to show it to you overhead so you can see how wonky that is, it might just work, even though it's a little bit crazy. Now, what happens when I put these thinner pieces right here and miter those on that corner? Yeah, that I'm not a big fan of, putting both of them together, because they're both wonky. They both don't meet up in that corner. So having the two of them that are both wonky, I don't think looks really great. I don't mind this one. I would be pretty happy with this one by itself, but I'm not happy with the two of them coming together. So I think I'm going to go back to my original idea of working with these two, but having them come out much, much more gradually into that corner. So I'm going to scrap these two pieces here. I'm going to work with my paper, and I'm going to make something longer here that comes out all the way to that corner. So let's give that a shot. Okay, I hope that you are getting something done in your sewing room while we are playing here together. Just watching me play is not going to get your quilts accomplished, but having some company while you are getting your quilts done and helping me design this next phase for my quilt, that's a great thing. So I really hope that you're using this time productively to not only watch what I'm doing, but to really play in your own sewing room and get some actual work done. Get some actual quilting accomplished while we sit here and play together. That's why I come here every Tuesday to spend some time with you, because I want you to be getting work done while we get to play, and I want you to have some company while you get your own work done. So let's see. I'm going to use my Leaves Galore Grande, and I'm going to trace out that shape once again. But when I get to the bottom here, I'm actually going to extend that shape just by holding the tool against what I've already marked and making this arc longer. Then I did come in with the 8-inch tool before, so I'm going to use that same one again, and I'm going to come in at a nice angle In fact, I think it's even more of an acute angle when I look at my template here. Yeah, I'm gonna come in a little bit further. Okay, and I'm gonna make that first curve, but then it starts to go out again, right? I don't want that S-shaped curve, so I'm gonna continue this. I'm gonna rotate that shape, and I'm gonna come inside here, and it's almost gonna make this rounded circle on this inside corner. Do you see how I'm making that beautiful arc shape? Now, I could cut this on the fold of the fabric, but that's gonna open up that curve so it's almost a half circle. And I know that these have to come together in the corner here just a few inches apart. So I need 2 of these opposite directions, and then I'll have to miter the place where they join together. So let me cut this one out of paper. And then I can play with this on the quilt itself. Now I don't want to cut this out of fabric yet. I only have a little bit of this fabric left, so I don't want to waste my fabric. So I'm going to do everything out of paper. Now here's a little hint for you. What if you took your fabric and you photocopy your fabric on a photocopier? Then you would get to work in your actual fabric color. I could make this out of photocopied fabric, make this out of that red color. So then I could lay that red right on the quilt, and I would get a much better approximation of what it was going to look like in the end. Okay, so you can see how I mentioned that even though the tools are not the perfect tool for the job because the curve isn't exactly what I wanted, I can still use a paper template, and I can place that paper template on my fabric. And I think I'm ready to do that now. I'm going to take my fused fabric, and I'm going to place that paper template right on the fabric. And then I can use my rotary cutter and my tool to guide me when I'm cutting this fabric. So it's not going to be the perfect curve for my finished cut, but this tool is just going to guide me in that cut. So now let's do it on the fabric. Oh, we need it further away for you to see it. Okay, so I'm going to follow the edge of the curve with my tool. I'm going to rotary cut as far as I can. Okay, and then I'm going to just curve. Oh, I should have glued it down. Yeah, let's put a little bit of a pin in there or something. Yeah, I'm going to put a pin right here on the end where I've already cut. So I've already cut this section right here. Now I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to use my tool to continue cutting. So even though the tool is not the perfect tool for the job, it's still going to help when you're cutting these curves. Okay, we'll cut as far as we can. And then we're going to cut it a little bit further. All right. So I got a little jog there, so I just have to smooth that out. Okay, this is going to be way, way, way too long. And I am working with limited fabrics, but I have the rest of this piece. So I know I'm going to have enough to get out all 4 of my swags. But let's see how we did. So we've made this swag now, and when we miter them together, no matter how wide they have to be, no matter at what angle they need to be, I'm going to be able to connect this point and this point with a straight line. Then I'm going to be able to fuse them back together, and I'm going to be able to blanket stitch that edge so that they connect seamlessly. So let's go back on our quilt now. Now we have a much bigger piece that we can play with. The white just wasn't working for me in order to audition these fabrics, or not audition the fabrics, audition the shapes. The white was not working for me to audition those shapes because I just couldn't see it well enough on the corner here. Now I'm looking for the one corner. I've only cut one corner and put that mitered line on it. So this is the one right here. So I've cut this one corner. I have my swag that needs to, that I need to add right here on that corner. And I'll need to actually cut one of those out of fused fabric in order to have one that is fusible that I can use for that corner. The other swags that I have were I was just demonstrating how to cut them so they don't have any fusible on them. So we're going to need to place this one back again. Keep it 1.5 inches from this edge. Oops, right off the edge of the table. Okay, and now we need to play with these swags here to see how we're going to make them come together here. Yeah, having them longer than needed is really helpful to see how they're going to join right here at that diagonal line. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. When I start adding all my little berries, it's going to distract from the fact that this piece is way bigger than this piece right here. This one is a lot further away from that centering line, but I really like the way it comes out further on this point. Let me even try to make this even longer and have it come out way out here, trying to approximate. This is 1.5 inches from the edge. If I try to get this one about 1.5 inches from the edge, it might look a little bit more balanced. But you know, I kind of feel like this is really huge now. This is really big, and it seems a little bit overpowering on this corner. So I think I am going to angle it in and just cover over where this berry would normally happen on this end. Cover over that berry. Bring this one in from the berry and see where it crosses. Right there. All right, I like that better. It's a little bit more delicate. When I bring it out to the corner, these get awfully thick and chunky. And when I bring that out to the corner, I think it looks a little bit too heavy. So there you have it. That is going to be my final design for the corner of this border. And all I'm going to do is take a chalk and a straight edge, and I'm going to mark that diagonal line. And that's going to give me the exact finished size for that piece of swag. Now that I have this one cut, all 4 borders should be, I'm not going to guarantee it, but they should be roughly the same size. But because we're working border by border here, I'm not going to cut them exactly the same size and then find out my placement of the other swags wasn't quite right. So I'm going to take this step by step. I'm going to make 4 of these. I'm going to lay them out and I'm going to put them up on my design wall or upstairs where I can lay them out flat on the floor. Then I'm going to arrange each one individually before I fuse. The berries can cover up a little bit of discrepancy here and there, but if each of these are slightly different size, the only real key is going to be how distant are they from that corner. I'm going to measure this distance from the corner right here, And as long as they're consistent in the depth of that swag from the corner, it's not going to matter here how distant they are from that diagonal line. So that was, gosh, an hour of figuring out those corners. But we've done it. And that was an hour well spent, because that corner on our swag border, it's really important, right? It's a real focal point on this quilt, and I didn't want to mess it up. So I wanted to do this design session justice and make sure we all came to the same conclusion that this was really the right way to make that swag and complete the corner of this quilt. And I think we've done it. So that is a huge load off my mind. Yeah, it'll look great, won't it, Kathy? It's a huge load off my mind that we have now finalized the corner design for this quilt. It's not going to take me long to sew on these 4 corner swags, and it's been quite a challenge. Yes, it has, Elaine. Phew. Yeah, but I'm glad that you spent this time with me to see how much time and energy and effort goes into finalizing these designs and making them work. We absolutely want to do the best job we can designing our quilts. We want to take that time to go the extra mile to make it look right. And once you do, you're going to be so happy that you did. So I've just made a few little adjustments here. I'm going to remark that center line, and then I'm going to go and get to work and get this quilt finished. So I'll go ahead and cut 4 of these swag corners. We'll get them pressed in place. I'm even going to get to stitching them hopefully today. And this quilt is going to be one for the record books. This is going to go to a professional machine quilter. I don't trust myself to quilt this one on my own since I'm so new to my long arm. But my intention is to get this done for the quilt show that I have coming up in March for my Marathon Quilt Guild, and in April for my Thimble Pleasures Quilt Guild. So I hope you've gotten a lot accomplished while I was sitting here playing with the design for these 4 corners. Go and get your quilts made, get your UFOs finished so that you can complete your next quilt with beautiful, absolutely gorgeous rotary cut applique. And I just want to leave you with this one more reiteration of that thought. Tools are made to make your job easier. If using a tool is harder for you than doing it in the traditional methods, then absolutely use your traditional methods. But I think you will find that once you get accustomed to using these tools, once you perfect using the tools, you're going to find so much saved time and energy, and you're going to feel more creative because you have the tools that make your life easier. So come and see me next time on Sewing and Slippers with Sue. I'm going to head out and get this quilt done, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish on your quilts as well. Come join me at SuePellinDesigns.com for loads more inspiration and information and videos of making my rotary cut applique quilts. Bye, everybody, and we'll see you all again very soon.